Good morning. Good morning. Listen, I always get like caught up in vibing to my intro video because I love the video and I love the music. So shout out to Soul Breast Music for creating that lovely track. Good morning, everybody. Tearing up stuff. It's been a minute. It's just 2 weeks, really. Let me just not be dramatic. It's been 2 weeks. I'm not sure if anybody missed me, but I've certainly missed being here. I missed having awesome guests. So I'm so excited about having a guest again this morning. But welcome to Mindful Over Matters. My name is Zanita Ellison. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, the owner of New Vision Behavioral Health, and other stuff that I do. But Mindful Over Matters, this is where we discuss or curate conversations regarding intentional living. Yes. And so today we have a guest. I'm going to let my guest introduce herself. Don't go into your spiel. I know it's ready. Like, don't, we want to give it to the people, but just tell us, who are you?
Oh, no problems. My name is Courtney West. I am the owner and operator of 3 Gems Birth Services. I am a pediatric nurse and a full spectrum doula.
Yes, Courtney West. Listen, Courtney is a jewel, y'all. Not only is she gifted, smart, and talented, but she is so sweet at heart. And so I'm so grateful that we were having a conversation about something totally different. And I was like, yo, she should be on my podcast. My podcast is so random. I never know who I'm going to ask. But when the people I ask, they show up and they're so impactful. And so I know today won't be anything less than impactful. How you been, Courtney?
I'm doing great, just living and just enjoying the whole moment of just being present.
Yes, it's so important for us to be present, right?
Absolutely.
Because there's so many things that could get our attention, that can distract us, that could confuse us. I always say depression is when we focus in the past, and anxiety comes when we live in the future. And so it's so important that we just stay in the here, in the now, because trust, we only have enough energy and capacity to deal with the here and the now.
Facts. It's just like, how you showing up? It's like, how am I showing up in this moment? Right here. I'm right here in this moment.
Right. People like, how you doing? I say, I'm present. Like, I'm present. Yep, I'm present. And so today we are present. Courtney, so like I said, this podcast, Mindful Over Matters, is where we have conversations surrounding intentional living. And in order for us to live intentional, we have to be informed, right? And so I think it's so important that we are open to just information about anything. You know, you never know what you could learn. I am a fanatic of NPR radio. This can be a plug if they fund this podcast. Like,
with that,
let that be a plug, right? But like NPR radio is so cool to me because they feature all sorts of people from all sorts of walk of life, and they feature so many different topics that you wouldn't normally think is relevant to your everyday life, but it's so relevant.
Absolutely. I am also a big NPR. I grew up listening to NPR, and that's how you get such a well-rounded thought of life, because there is a lot of different topics that are so relevant to you and you never thought about it, or just from a different type of perspective. So yes, come on, NPR, pick this up. Let's
pick this up, NPR. Right, exactly. So, I like to I didn't realize it till just now. Maybe I like to model my podcast behind that that model of just having different conversations about anything in life with very powerful people. And so today, Courtney, we are going to talk about maternal health, maternal death, and doulas, and the impact you all have in the world, and how this came about. So wait, fellas, before any of you are tuned in, I don't even know if anybody's tuned in. I never can tell. But if you're tuned in now or we'll tune in later. Hey, Carla. Before you log out and think this doesn't have anything to do with me, or this is a woman thing. No. If you have a sister, if you have a daughter, if you are in the age and stage of planning a family, this conversation is for you, because you are connected to women who are giving birth more than you realize. And so we feel like this conversation is just relevant for anybody. So before we get into my tons of questions for you, Courtney, I like to ask all my guests to define, what does it mean to you to live intentional? What does that mean?
Ooh, that's a beautiful question. Living intentional for me is walking in purpose. Do what really drives and motivates you to do, and to move intentionally in that. That's what I model my life off of, doing this type of work when you're doing with, people and families and trauma. There has to be a lot of healing there. So I cannot heal people when I'm unhealed myself. So you can, but it's broken. So it's disingenuous to move that way. So I have really worked on, it's like, how do I focus? How do I show up? And be intentional. Just really be intentional about the love that I do, the work that I do, and then giving that love and stuff into myself.
Yes, absolutely. So living intentional to you sounds like it means taking care of self as well as taking care of others.
Absolutely. You have to. I think as Black women in general, we are taught to give and give and give and give. Even if you're broken, you got to continue to give. And that is very detrimental. And in the work that I do, I see it a lot in birth and in womb care, because we carry so much pain and so much pressure there. So I've noticed in my work is like, okay, if I don't take care of self and don't take care of my womb, take care of my vessel, I cannot give that is expected to me, but also do I have to give like that? And if I am giving that much to the universe, I need to be giving that also to myself.
So what is womb care? What do you mean taking care of your womb? What is that?
So womb care, this is when as women, and especially in Black women, we carry most of our stress and everything inside of our womb. So sometimes you'll notice your periods are longer, you're having more cramping, you're having more bleeding. A lot of that has to do with stressors. So taking care of your womb is, how are you taking care of yourself? So that's like drinking certain herbal teas. Like, I'm sitting here talking to you with my nettles tea that actually strengthens your uterus, or rose hips. So that's get it out. Take your stuff. Eating enough ginger. Why? Because that helps with moving your blood around in your body, which has a lot to do with what? Your womb. Your womb is your vessel that you carry life in. So if you're constantly stressed, you're eating bad, you're not hydrating enough, and you're just taking on trauma, all that focuses in your womb. Sometimes when you notice women who work a lot and we're really stressed, our midsections are really swollen. Our backs are really tight, and especially with we curvy. You're carrying a lot back there, and then you're having to carry the pain of that. A lot of that has to do is that because your body's out of sync. You're carrying too much trauma. So how to work on that is drinking teas, juicing. Being intentional with yourself with yoga, meditation, working out. Why? Because you're moving this blood around, you're moving your body around, you're taking that stress and relieving it. So that is womb care.
Wow. That's wow. I didn't know that. I heard about the chakras or whatever, and I know one of the chakras is in the womb. What would be like the equivalent for a man? So a woman's womb is, the area where we birth, around our stomach area. What is it for a man?
For a man, it's his penis, it's his balls. It's like his still his private area that is still carries so much things. So think about it. When a man is too stressed and you're carrying all this tension, you usually carry it in your chest and in your genitals, because you feel backed up. It's their testosterone. So everyone needs a release of some sort. So what does that release look like for men? And it's very difficult for men. They don't get a lot of times space, especially for Black men, safe spaces that you're allowed to release. And sometimes it comes out in very toxic ways. So it might come out in over hyper aggression or sexual promiscuity. I'm just trying to look for a release. Where are the healthy releases to do that in? It's like, okay, where is there a healthy space for men to be able to talk?
Right.
And in my work with fathers, new dads, they'd be like, oh, he's not there, he's not present. Well, who's checking on his mental health? He may not be able to be present. What does that presence look like? There might be a lot of trauma to having a child for him, his own experience or what he's seen with his mother or sisters or things. So he's carrying his own trauma and will move in that space. So it's about having safe spaces for them. And I always do that with my fathers. Like, hey, you can talk to me. There is no judgment. And if you don't feel comfortable talking to me, let me find someone you can feel comfortable talking to. So therefore, your needs are met just as much as your wife's needs are met or your partner's needs are met because you matter in this cycle. So it's just like men carry their stuff too. That's why they be walking around, yo, man, your energy checked. You know, you need to balance that out. It's okay. Go handle that.
Wow, that's so informative. I didn't know that, and I didn't realize that was a real question. Like, what is the equivalent for a man? And it's funny because you brought up, when you talk to some of your mothers and they say the fathers aren't there and they have their reasons of why. But it's like, do we create a safe space for the fathers to be present? Do we create a new trauma for them to even not want to show up? Unfortunately. Some of us as women don't necessarily create the healthiest environment for men to show up and be a part of the co-parenting process, and for a lot of different reasons. And that's a whole nother topic, but I'm sure you see it a lot in your work though.
Oh yeah, we have to we have to be realistic about conversations about how babies are really brought into the world. It's not like a lot of times, yes, they are planned sometimes, but majority of them are not. We're having fun or we are enjoying this person in the moment, not always putting down the building blocks of what's your trauma? How are you raised? And so a lot of times we're having to have this education of learning of self, of each other while raising a baby. So if you've never talked about, well, I watched my mother as a single mother raise 5 people who were gone. She had to work 4 or 5 shifts. And the only time I ever seen a man in her life was to get her pregnant and leave. That's his understanding of what a male does in showing up. And then if you have a young woman who's pregnant, whose father was very present, has always been in her life. Her parents have been married for 30 years and his dad has taken to her every cotillion, father-daughter dance, and shows up in his present like this. You have 2 different ideas of what a father does and how a man shows up. So do we fault the father who doesn't know what that is? Not necessarily. We have to say, well, what do you know? Well, this is what I know. Well, these are my expectations. So how do we build a safe space to have that conversation and to build in places of how do we fill this in and not to feel demasculated about not knowing something. It's okay not to know. I don't know a lot of stuff. You don't get pregnant like, I know everything. You don't. It's not realistic. So what would make it realistic for a man to be like, I just know how to be a father? Well, if you were shown that, that's beautiful. But unfortunately, a lot of times we are having parents who are being raised in a single parent home, sometimes by grandparents, sometimes by mothers. So whatever that is, you're taking that information and that's what you're coming to the table with. So we got to just learn how to work with that and make it safe for both sides of the coin, not just one side of the coin.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so important. If we want the fathers to show up and be present, we have to create an environment that welcomes it and that is empathetic of the background of that man, and it's never to make excuses for them to not be present or to be a toxic presence, but we want to make it relevant, their background and their history. When I do couples counseling, one of the first things I do is I ask them to share in session what their childhood was like. Why is that important? Because who we are today, how we show up in the world, the way we show up in the world, the way we show up in relationships, especially, is a direct correlation or connection to our childhood experiences. What we saw, how we were raised, who we were raised by, how they showed love, how they didn't show love. And so when couples have that understanding or that realization, it allows them, one, to depersonalize their partner's behavior, because they're like, oh, they only do this to me, I must be doing something wrong or whatever, but also have a level of empathy and regard for their partner's background. I want my clients to say, oh, no wonder why he does this. No wonder why she says this. Because it really has nothing to do with us, but it has a lot to do with their historical information, their historical history.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. So we always have to leave space for that.
Exactly. So I jump right in, but for those who may just be tuning in or who are eager to know what the heck you do and why are we talking about this, tell us what you say. You were a pediatric nurse, right?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes, I've been a pediatric nurse going on 11 years.
Wow. Yay. Congrats in the work.
Thank you. I have a background really focused on peds and maternal health and working in that space. And that's actually because I was a pediatric nurse is what brings me to becoming a doula, actually, from what I was seeing in the work that I was doing as a nurse.
Yes. So what is a doula, Courtney?
A doula. Okay. So a doula is a person who has the most evidence-based knowledge when it comes to maternity and health. So what we do is that we go with the family and we express to you what are your options? How do you birth? What does childbirth education look like? And really being there to hold hands with the family and say, how do we go through this journey? So we go to doctor's appointments with you. We tell you what your birth options are. A lot of people aren't aware that you do not have to birth in a hospital. You can have a home birth. You can have a birth center birth. What is the most evidence-based knowledge that is out there about the birthing experience? So a lot of times doctors, unfortunately, are not always honest with their clients. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, especially for people who are in the Black and brown diaspora, due to the history of having issues with the medical system and them not listening to us, a lot of times we're not heard or we don't understand what is going on. So what a doula does is we bridge that gap. We are like the soundboard for everybody, and to be able to be there for you and say, okay, this is what's going on. Do you understand what's going on? Are you aware of the information? We go with you during the birthing process. I teach you pain management skills for you and your partner. And we show up at the birth. We're there with you the whole time to make sure that your birth rights are heard and that you're comfortable during the birthing experience and that you're educated on how to birth. Most people don't know that the best way to birth is not laying on your back. It's absolutely the worst way to birth. So giving you the options and the empowerment of saying, hey, do you want to stand? Do you want to squat? Do you want to kneel? So that you can be empowered of your birth and that in that space that you're heard. And it's not just the medical system telling you what to do, but also holding them accountable for what's going on. So if you're having pain or your blood pressure is too high and you're not feeling well, we're there to say, hey, we need you to look at this and to see this individual as a person. So that's what a doula does. We're here to just support you from the beginning of your pregnancy to your labor to doing postpartum with you. We are here to support you through that whole process.
Wow, y'all do a lot. I had no clue when I gave birth 19 years ago. I had maybe 20. I had no clue that there was even an option for a doula. Now, I was asked if I wanted a midwife. They didn't even explain what a midwife was. Mm-hmm. All I saw was like, and it's real corny, but for real. I saw Little House on the Prairie. I saw this old white lady that was coming in to give birth to my baby, help me give birth to my baby. And I was like, no, I didn't think they were skilled as a doctor. I had this ignorant view of midwives in that the only person that could successfully deliver my baby was a doctor. And
so no judgment to you. Yeah, no judgment to you, because that was actually constructed in the United States. So let me give you a little history lesson. Yes, you touched on that. So to be very clear, the United States, but especially the South, were birthed by Black midwives. Okay, Black midwives that brought their tools over from Africa, birthed this nation. So in most parts of Florida, Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama, they were majority birthed by Black midwives. So when it came to obstetrics and midwifery, that's where you went. Everybody went to the midwife. The midwife had the skills, the talents, and knowledge that have been passed down for generation to generation to come and birth your baby. It wasn't until white medical system decided we're going to take this over, and we've decided that Black women are no longer skilled. So they would send out white nurses with their thought process to come in there, and they're talking to women who birthed over 200, 300 babies, birthed whole cities, and say that you're a Black, you are unskilled, we're going to take this from you because your process is dirty. They had to come and be now be licensed by their standpoints. But the problem with the licensures with it, they made it so that it wasn't sustainable. And so what happened is instead of having, 200 Black midwives, we had one or two, then none. So then obstetrics took it in. Then there was a resurgence of wanting to have the midwife, and white women took it over.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been here. We built your country. We've done the things, but history has changed that now everyone thinks that you have to go to the hospital because birth is a emergency issue that only the doctor can take care of, which is shown with Black women that actually we're dying three to four times our rate as white counterpart, dealing with the history of obstetrics on how we are seen by them. So we're running to people who are known for killing us.
Wow. And it's not because we want to be killed or we're signing up for death. We don't know.
Right. It's no one's fault. You don't know because it's been stripped from your history. These are not things you were taught unless you were raised in a house in a background like I was that midwifery is talked about in normal. You wouldn't know what this was. So it's just having to have a new vision and lens onto the issue. And it took, the Serena Williams and it took these other stars to be having issues with Black maternal health to be kind of giving people like, hey, I don't know what to do. Or there is fear, but you don't know there's any other options. You're like, I guess I got to go to the hospital because you don't have enough information on a midwife and a doula has never been presented to you in a way like, what is that? Because the lovely thing with a doula is we go anywhere. We go to the hospital with you. We go to the birth center with you. If you birth at home, we're there with you. We are our own entity that we can travel with you no matter what you do, because we are non-medical. We are here for the psychosocial. We're here for the emotional support. We are here to give you the resources. So as a doula, I will say, you know what? I noticed you're struggling with some mental health things. Let me give you Zanita's number. She's amazing. You make sure that they have close vetted people. You send them to a chiropractor. You send them to a nutritionist. You take care of those options for them because we are like, again, the sounding board. We're here to give you your options that you didn't know existed. So, I get moms like you all the time who like, I didn't know. That's okay. You didn't know. We just are building on what you know now. And now you know the options. You know what you didn't like. So let's do what you want and what you deserve to have in a birthing experience and in a life experience. Having a baby is supposed to be a joyous time. Not, I got to go in here and fight for my life and wonder if I'm going to be heard. Is it going to be some trauma? Because unfortunately, if you poll a lot of women in a room and you say, okay, how many women have given birth in a hospital? Okay. And they say, how many were traumatized? If it's a mixture of Black and white women, unfortunately, in a room of 20 and there's 12 Black women, usually all 10 put their hands up. The two who don't had midwives or doulas.
Wow. That's crazy. Let's keep with the statistics. So maternal health refers to the health of a woman during pregnancy, childbirth, and the postnatal period. So that's post-delivery, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So like you said, when you're pregnant, you look forward to having a positive experience with every stage of the pregnancy process, especially delivery. Now I've done this 9 months of everything and now I'm ready to just produce life. Literally, I'm ready for this life to come out of me. But unfortunately, there are many women who don't get to the stage of actually becoming a mother with a live baby because of maternal death. Maternal death is defined by the World Health Organization as the death of a woman while pregnant or within 42 days of termination of pregnancy or post-labor. I didn't know that they considered maternal death even if the baby died days after it was born. I thought it was just during labor and delivery.
A lot of people don't know that because of the signs and symptoms that happen afterwards to the mother can happen. So say if the baby died and all the placenta wasn't removed, the mother becomes septic and gets very sick, or her blood pressures are so unregulated that, she has a heart attack. So these things are what happen a lot of time post-op that people don't know. And that time is lost because no one is checking on them or know that they need to be checked on during that period of time.
Wow, that is so crucial. I had no idea that women were actually going home and dying days later, some even weeks later after giving birth. I heard about SIDS, the argument of how to lay the baby and all that stuff. They gave you a lot of education about that, but not a whole lot of how a new mom can take care of herself, or what she needs to be mindful of post delivery when they
Absolutely.
send you home.
Absolutely. So let's think about it. After you deliver your beautiful baby, you go in maybe a day or two after you get out of the hospital, you go to the doctor. All right, great. They don't see you for 6 weeks. So all these things are happening in 6 weeks. You're post-op. So if you had a C-section, you had a surgical procedure and no one is checking on you for 6 weeks. You just delivered a whole baby. So during this period of time of pregnancy, all your organs have been moved around. You've lost quite a bit of blood. Who's managing your bleeding? How do you know how much blood is too much blood? What if you start catching a fever? No one is really taught. They'll give you a little pamphlet and say, okay, before you go home, look out for this and this and this. Okay, bye. If you get that. And so now you're left for 6 weeks to figure out everything that could happen in between that period of time. And that is where the danger lies, in that going home period. And that's where, doulas really come into that space to give that time between there. Like, someone is checking on you, teaching you to look at your blood pressures. How much bleeding are you having? What are you eating? What to eat? How to take care of yourself? How are you doing in this process of becoming a new parent? How is your mental health showing up? And being able to say, hey, you need to call your doctor. There's something wrong. Hey, you need to go back to the hospital, but not go into the ER. Go back to the maternal health department that you had your baby from. You need to go back to your baby place, because the ER may not know what they're looking at, because labor and delivery is a specialty. You need to go back where you're from so they know what to look for you. So if you're running fevers, and you're having chills, and you're having pain, it could have been like some of your placenta wasn't removed. If you go to the ER, they're not going to know to look for that.
Wow, that's crazy. That is so crazy. So I was doing more research into this because maternal health, maternal death is something that's so prevalent that we don't even realize. But they were saying that, let's see, in 2021, there were 20.4 deaths per 100,000 live births for women under the age of 25. 31.3 for those aged 25 to 39, and 138.5 for those aged 40 and over. So obviously, the older the age of the woman giving birth or pregnant, the more likely she is to experience a maternal death.
So I want to touch on that.
Okay.
Yes and no. So maternal age plays a lot of part on a lot of different factors for a woman. So a lot of times with older women, they're not heard or spoken to. They're not considered viable. Or a lot of times, because they're older, they'll say some of their symptoms are from them being older. So sometimes it's really not so much that they're not healthier. Actually, women who are older tend to have are more prepared for birth, because they've been in their jobs for a long period of time. So they've been in their careers for a while. They're usually more settled. They usually have their house. They've had life experience. So actually, they're more together for it, but not being heard by the medical system and how the medical system is set up. Sometimes they're ignored more and things are overlooked because of their maternal age. There is some factors that do come into it when it comes with more complications of the uterus and the womb and the baby, but that really has to be looked at as the woman themselves. So if you're a 42-year-old woman who's been taking great care of herself all her life, you work out, you eat well, and you decide to have a baby, compared to my 25-year-old who is not taking good care of themselves, has more stressors, or not settled in and doesn't have a job, whose outcomes would you think would come out better?
Yeah, the healthier woman.
Right. It should be the healthier woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
But are you listening to that healthier woman? Does that healthier woman know the tools to say, okay, I'm very healthy, but what are the healthy things that I need to be during my pregnancy? Are they listening to what I'm saying?
Right.
Versus the 25-year-old who's like, I'm just willy-nilly in it out here. I'm just trying to figure it out. I think this is good. Okay, I'm going to do this. The body resilience has a lot to do with it too. So you got to look at it like a two-Florida code. It's like, okay, yes, this evidence is out there and that's true, but where are you pulling this evidence from? And what is the why behind that evidence?
Yep. The research is out there, but what are the factors that are contributing to the findings, the results, the outcomes, basically. Yeah, I
Absolutely.
didn't think about that. Wow. Good morning, I Inspire. Thank you for tuning in. So I know we got to do a break. Okay, it's time for our midpoint. It's time for our mid. It always happens. We get so like yes. So we will take a break for our artist of the week, yeah, day.
Week,
Week.
day. This
Yeah.
guy is amazing. R&B singer. His name is Hakeem Romance, and this is called Balance.
SOE. Hey, look. You done put some things that's heavy on my soul. So heavy I can't carry it, I lose control. Whoa, 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 whoa. Balance. Oh no, no, no. Oh no, 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 I'm back at it. I'm about to pull a big flex out. City boy chillin' with my chest out. Dust off my shoulders, I'm the best out. I'm a romantic bitch, never let her out. I'm about to act a donkey. Only if it want it. So let it until the morning. Shawty wanna take a ride on my pony. Ayy, what do we have here today? Shawty, you eatin', time to percolate. Put on your birthday suit, I like it. Something I can grab onto, yeah. I'm on, take it out, then you roll with better law, take it out on you, yeah. Where you tryna go? Just say the word and let me know. I show you things that you never seen before. Just don't cross that line, I'll leave you behind, disrespectfully. You done put some things that's heavy on my soul. So heavy I can't carry it, I lose control. Whoa, 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 whoa. Balance. Oh no, no, no. Oh no, 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 I'm back at it. Fresh, particular day. Fucking with a real who well. Too clean, gotta slide on the bitch. Tell her to keep giving, make a wish. I know you want it, babe. Hurry before it's too late. Don't keep me waiting now. Don't keep me waiting now. You can pull up, do what I say so. 50 shades of romance, you never let it go. This what you wanted, right? No backing out tonight. This what you asked for. Don't worry, I plan to give you more. Where you tryna go? Just say the word and let me know. I show you things that you never seen before. Just don't cross that line, I'll leave you behind, disrespectfully. You done put some things that's heavy on my soul. So heavy I can't carry it, I lose control. Whoa, 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 whoa. Balance. Oh no, no, no. Oh no, 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 I'm back at it.
My headphones.
And that is Hakeem Romance with Balance. And if you are an independent artist or a spoken word poet or even an up and coming comedian looking for some exposure, you can go to blastmusic247.com and register for free. That's blastmusic247.com, changing the industry one artist at a time. Now, I wanted to bring this up. Carla said I had 3 C-sections, and I am thankful. I had a big mom who birthed 17 children, 13 of them at home.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yes,
Oh, I'm
indeed.
so grateful you had her too.
Yes,
All right,
that is
so
amazing.
go ahead.
Thank you for sharing that, Carla. When I think about my birth, so I have 2 kids, 19 and 13. When I gave birth to my daughter, so my obstetrician, was obstetrician? What did he?
Extras,
OBGYN.
your
There we go.
OB.
Yes, my OB was a black man. And I felt comfortable because he was black.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, he's a man. And he was older in the field. He was like probably closer to the retirement age of obstetrics. And so he wasn't as his bedside skills wasn't really there. He was
Yeah.
very matter of fact, very frank. He tried to keep it light with comedy. But when I gave birth, it was in a hospital. I wanted to be induced. I'm not a patient person. I was like, let me, it's been 9 months, ready to get this baby out of me. Can we speed up my date? And they're like, sure. They didn't tell me that when you induce your contractions or heavier or harder, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
So I went into labor, and it was one anesthesiologist on the floor, the entire floor. So
Yep.
by the time they got to me, I was 9.5 centimeters dilated, right? And usually they say they don't give you an epidural, when you're, I think, past 7 or something. But
Yeah, it depends. When you're 9.5, you might as well push through and get it done.
listen, I wanted them drugs. I was like, give me the needle, somebody give me Tylenol, Motrin, something. Give me something, knock me out. So when the anesthesiologist got there, she was like, okay, we're going to give you the epidural anyway, but you got to sit still. So when I was holding over my mom was there. And when she put it in the first time, I jumped. And she was like, no, you can't do that. You can become paralyzed. And I'm like, so I'm pointing to the screen. I'm like, look at my contractions. I can't be still. Because she kept saying, be still. I jumped again. So they did it twice, but thank God it worked. But my doctor, like, he didn't ask me if I wanted to be cut. He just cut me. And it was, that was painful. I felt that. And I was like, well, could he at least ask me? Is this normal? Like, did they cut you? So after giving birth, when he cut me, I had to go through the stitching, which was so painful. The process to me was so traumatic. I felt like my spinal cord had shifted. Something was off about my back. And it was just like, he came in, delivered the baby, and he was out. Like,
Right.
Nothing else after that. The nurse talked to me or whatever. But to me, that first experience was so traumatic. To when I was pregnant again with my son, I was like, I don't think I want to do this. Like, I want to have another baby, but I don't want to go into labor.
Mm-hmm.
It was so scary for me. I didn't feel like I was guided through the process. So the second time around, I had a Black female OBGYN. So I'm like, okay, great. We're good. The day I give birth, well, the week she goes on vacation. So I had to give birth with a totally different doctor, whoever was doing the rounds at the hospital. So the person I was familiar with for 9 months actually didn't show up the most important day to me because she was on vacation.
So unfortunately, before we even get into that, let's unpack this. I am so sorry that happened to you and that was your experience, because there was a lot of things wrong with your experience. And a lot of it came from just not having the correct amount of knowledge. So backing up to having even the epidural. So where you were, let's call that transition space where you like, no, nuck if you buck, I'm ready, I'm done, I'm in pain, wop, take me home, this is awful, all of it. And in that space, really, that's when a doula would step in for you and be like, okay, look, this is what's happening to you. You're so close to the end. We're going to get through this. I want the drugs. I hear you. But if you get the drugs and your contractions are so on top of each other, you're going to cause yourself more pain. So with you jumping, that in turn, that needle shifts. So you notice you have severe pain through your hips and your butt that you may still have till this day.
I do.
You're agonizing amount of pain because you did it in this space. And you're trying to bend and hold still because this is a medical procedure that's being done to you. So they didn't go over like, yes, you can paralyze yourself. You can cause yourself nerve damage throughout there. Sometimes you have severe headaches afterwards because you're leaking spinal fluid. But no one talks to you about that. When it comes to episiotomies, they're supposed to talk to you about it, but a lot of times doctors don't. They don't give you consent. They're like, oh, I need to do this, whoosh. Even though evidence-based is actually shown that it's better to let the body naturally tear on its own versus healing it. Also, when you get stitches, you're supposed to be numbed out so you don't feel it. And if you are feeling it, that requires more medication. But unfortunately, as a Black woman, they feel that you feel pain differently. So no one's going to ask you. No one's going to worry about it. You're used to pain. You can take it. You're okay. And therefore, then you have this trauma built up in you. So when you have your next baby or any trauma that comes from that womb or from that experience, you're going to go, oh, I don't want to do this. This hurts. This is too much. We also forget in using OB practice, it's very normal that you may work with someone all the time and you love them and you just know they're going to be there and they're not. You get whoever's on call, but that's not a lot of times explained to you. You're like, no, I'm your OB. I'm here. Everything. But then it's time for the time. Oh, I'm not on call. You can get whatever you get. So but in all fairness, that is how that type of care is set up. Versus like in midwifery care, Midwifery care, it can be similar, but a lot of times it's different. You usually have one or two midwives. You know both of them. You have your appointments with the same people, and then you know they're showing up. They're showing up to your home. They're showing up to their birth center, and you're in that space. And these are doctors that are outside of the hospital. And I mean, these are midwives that are outside the hospital. In the hospital, they're checking on you, they're seeing you, but they're having to do a lot of times what the hospital gives. So, a lot of times your story, unfortunately, as horrible as it is not new. You say, okay, I want to be induced. I want to get this over with. No one telling you that your contractions are they're more intense. They're more painful because instead of having oxytocin with the love drug that it lets your body makes it on its own, you're having Pitocin, which is a synthetic hormone that is pumping into your body and is going up, titrating higher and higher and higher, which can be painful. And it can be very hard to manage. So when you do things like that, you start a spiral to need more and more medical intervention. Because remember, in a hospital, a birth is an emergency procedure versus in a home or birth center situation working with a midwife, it's not. This is just natural things. This is what is happening. Working with your body to see what you're doing. And having a doula, who is the in-between person, is saying, hey, these are what your options are. So if you told me, if I was your doula, Courtney, I'm over it, sick of this, I want to have this baby, I don't want to do this no more. I say, okay, let me give you the most evidence-based information about what you're asking for. And here's natural ways that we can go ahead and induce you. We're going to walk more. We're going to stretch more. You're going to be drinking coconut water. You're going to be doing other things to induce yourself naturally, that your own hormones are doing it yourself, versus going into the hospital, being put on Pitocin and having this horrific experience that is not necessarily needed to be had. And also patience. And be like, okay, let me tell you something. You spent all this time to carry this baby. It's been 9 months and I understand you're tired, but this is your body's way of saying, let's get ready to get this baby out. So let's emotionally prepare for this. Let's emotionally prepare for this, because people are so for a birth, but not realize what a birth is. Giving birth and labor itself is like running a marathon. If you don't train for it, you're just floundering out here. And that's how a lot of negative things happen, because we haven't practiced on how do we move in these spaces.
Yes. Wow. So true. You hit on so many things that I can certainly relate to, because my mental health was not good. When I was pregnant with my daughter, my first child, I didn't want to be pregnant. It was unplanned. The relationship with her father was unplanned and not healthy. And I just wanted to just get let's get this over with so I can move on with my life. That was my mentality. And so I was so depressed and I was a therapist, but I had just graduated undergrad actually, but I was so depressed that I didn't have the capacity to be excited about the pregnancy, to even become informed. I just wanted to get it over with. And here I am, college educated woman. And, my family, they did the best they could, but they didn't really know how to show up for me. And so, it was so many things impacting me being a healthy presence, me advocating for myself, me asking questions. I did it, but I'm so blessed that I made it through, because when we look at statistics, African-American women, Black and brown women are not living through labor and delivery.
Absolutely.
They are dying in record numbers. I saw something that said 42 deaths per 100,000 live births versus 12 deaths per 100,000 live births amongst white women. So we are almost double the more likely to die during labor and delivery than white women. Absolutely. Why is that, Courtney?
So a big part of it is implicit biases that are in the hospital, which is a nice way of saying blatant racism that is taught through the medical system, that Black women don't feel pain the same way. We don't have to explain things the same way to you. I can do what I want to you, because a lot of times when you're going to the hospital setting and you're giving birth, a lot of Black women don't know one of the things that are considered high risk is being Black, period. You're already looked at as a high risk statistic. You're already thought to being loud and being able to handle lots amount of pain, because society has made it that way. And so therefore, when you're going into the birthing space, a lot of times you're dealing with a lot of the psychosocials as well. You, just like you stated, you were depressed. There was no one to really speak to it. Everything was new. You're just trying to make it through. So you're so worried about your mental health, you don't even know how to show up for yourself. And this happens a lot because you don't know the questions to ask. And even if you are informed and you do know the questions to ask, they're not giving you the answers. They'll just like, next time. Your visits are only 5 to 10 minutes. You wait in the waiting room longer than you were seen. So how are you getting real factual information on how to take care of yourself? It's not. And so when you're having that, let's look at the psychosocials of it too. Look about I live in St. Pete. So the large community of Black living people live in a span of area. There's no grocery stores at all. They're living in the
food deserts.
We live in food deserts. So if you live in a food desert, you're a mother of 5. You're in a relationship that did not, let's look at it both ways. Or is in a relationship that was not planned, or you are in a marriage and in a planned relationship and y'all are just trying to make it because rent is as high as it is. There is no food. The socioeconomics requires you not to be able to work only 40 hours. You got to work 48 hours and then they have to work 48 hours. You still have to raise these children. This is not conducive to a healthy pregnancy. So all of that needs to be held into account. Then go to see a doctor who's not listening to you anyway. And you're just telling you to grin and bear it. So a lot of times Black women are going in, it's like, hey, I'm having severe headaches. I have a headache that's so bad and my blood pressure is high. And your physician will be like, oh, it's because you're Black. All y'all got high blood pressure, which isn't true. Your blood pressure can be high because you're so stressed and you have white coat syndrome that you are fearful of the medical system. So you're scared when you're going there because the doctor doesn't listen to you anyway. I'm stressed out about having to put food on the table, working the many hours I have, and know that I've been waiting here this long. I didn't have a way to get here. I had to get a ride to get to this appointment that is really not conducive to me because now I'm not working because I got to come to this appointment and then expected to have low blood pressure. How is that even realistic? But due to these things, and it's a continuation of these things, it makes more problems. So if he does look at you, say, okay, I'm gonna put you on high blood pressure medication. Well, that in turn comes with its own issues. And then now I'm stressed out and going to the hospital. They're saying, okay, now you need to be induced, not explaining induction to you. Now I already have high blood pressure. I'm getting induced with Pitocin, which is going to stress me out even worse. That's going to raise my blood pressure even worse. Okay, now you just give birth. No one's listening. All right, we just gonna give you a C-section, or just say, you get through it. And there's one anesthesiologist that night. And you're number 12 on the list.
Right.
We've stacked up so many things against this person that you're expecting their heart to be okay, their mental health to be okay with the amount of stress that you put on them. It's not realistic. It's actually very harmful. And then when all this is happening, and say you make it through the birth, but you're hemorrhaging, but no one's listening to you, you have no way to make it through. And this is happening to our moms over and over again, either during the birthing process that their hearts give out, the blood pressure goes up, or they have a seizure because no one's watching them. They went from pre-eclamptic to eclamptic. That's when you're having the high blood pressures and now the seizures with it. We have a whole new problem here. And this problem, and here's the deal, which is really disturbing. If this was white women that this numbers were happening to, this would be an epidemic. But because it's us, people are just now hearing about something that's been going on for decades.
Wow. That is crazy. And this is why I'm not only hearing, Courtney, that it's important to have a doula, but also to have a Black doula. If you are a woman of color, to have a Black doula who is understanding and empathetic about the needs and the medical background of Black and brown women, for sure. I want to look at the comments. I'm going to speak to some of the comments. Carla, thank you for sharing a lot of your story. You said that you lost your twins at 8 months of pregnancy. Wow, I'm so sorry to hear that. So sorry to hear that. Is that pretty common in the work you see, Courtney, to where women aren't making it to full term? And what do you think what are some of the implications with that?
So before I even get into that, Carla, I am so sorry. Let's hold some space for you and moments for you. That was very difficult and that's very harmful. And I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I wish you would have had a doula to be there in your space. So moment for you. So to answer your question, unfortunately, this happens a lot. It has been shown that having someone in your corner, and that's why it's so important to have a doula, people make it longer through their pregnancies. Without doula doula help, a lot of times you're seeing these women giving birth at 35 to 37 weeks. So a viable pregnancy is 37 weeks. And a lot of times we're not even making it there due to the stress that comes with it. With twin pregnancies, especially, one thing that most twin moms don't know, that usually you don't make it to term. But one of the ways to help it is by eating more protein and having completely less stress. A lot of times twin moms end up having to go on bed rest at the end just so that they'll give their bodies enough time to be able to hold these babies and to be prepared for that. But if no one is telling you this information and you're overly stressed, no one is listening to you, you're having these issues because fight or flight is real. If you're under so much stress and your body's now becoming toxic, what are you going to do? Your body's going to omit that baby because I'm trying to save my baby. And I want to go back into the comments where they say this is like the most traumatic issue that happens. So let's talk about imprinting. So when we give birth, we imprint on our child. So our birthing experience imprints on our baby. So if you've had nothing but trauma, you're imprinting trauma onto your baby as soon as their first hit life, they've been traumatized.
Yes.
You came through the womb traumatized. So that is what we're setting up. And therefore, that is how the system is set up. Let me traumatize Black and brown bodies from the jump. I'm going to traumatize your mother, traumatize you, and then you go through a system of trauma. How do you ever heal? But if you're attacking this at a different way, it's like you get a doula, you get someone who can attach you with the mental health, everything else. We deal with all of this before we give birth, and then we show the medical establishment how to show up for us.
Yes.
You with your birth plan, you come with your doula, like, no. This is how this is going to be done. And this is something you worked with your midwife or your OB with from jump. This is what my standard of care will be. Can you do it or can't you do it? Because if you can't, I can go somewhere else, because at the end of the day, it's a business to them. And if you want a happy client, you want to get this money, you're going to do what I say. And then being able to show up that way. But how can you expect people to show up that way if you don't have that knowledge or information and you're coming from trauma? So you think the trauma is normal. This is how they are. They don't look at you. They treat you bad. This is what standard care is. It is not.
Right. I love how you even, you put the plug in about trauma. We don't consider perinatal mental health or maternal mental health, because you mentioned the word imprint, and I love that. But mental health can also be passed in vitro. The same way you can pass down food to your baby through the system, those stress hormones come from you and go right into that baby. And so a lot of the work I do when I'm working with pregnant mothers and their partners is to have, how can we eliminate or reduce your stressors? What are your outlets? How are you taking care of your mental, emotional health? What areas of your life could you impact that could make your current stresses a little less stressful? Who can support you? The things we don't really think about, because like you said, I may be working 40 hours and I'm 5 and 6 months pregnant, because life still goes on. I still have to pay the bills, even though I am pregnant, even though I may have hypertension, my feet may be swollen. I may even be a high-risk pregnancy. I can't afford to lay up and be bedridden for however many months. And so the psychosocial stressors that a lot of these women and families face impact not only the pregnancy, but also that life that you're bringing in. They say, how can a 3-year-old or how can an infant have depression? I was born depressed. My mom was depressed when she gave birth to me. I was born the color blue. The doctor said she would be depressed for the rest of her life. And they were right. I remember being a little girl and just crying and being sad and not knowing why. And so we don't necessarily pay a whole lot of attention to the importance of our mental, emotional health while we're pregnant and how that impacts our seed. Sophia says, such awesome information. Grateful for this. Definitely vital information to help prepare my daughters if and when they choose to have children. Yes. When we are informed mothers, maybe we didn't get it right or get the right treatment for us. But if we are empowered and equipped to support our daughters, our nieces, our grandchildren, our neighbors, whoever, then we could be saving and supporting a life one way or another. And that's what this podcast is about. That's what these conversations are about. That's what awesome professionals like Courtney, this is a contribution you have to the world, Courtney. I always say this, like what you do is so vital. The knowledge you have is it's so impressive. But the fact that you step in areas to where they wouldn't traditionally get this information. I am 2 times college educated, and I didn't know 90% of the stuff you share with me in the past to today as well.
I'm so glad to be able to do this knowledge and how important and vital it is. It is important. I can say for myself, I have 2 daughters. I have a 7-year-old and a 15-year-old. I got into this work for them because what I experienced birth-wise in St. Pete versus in Tallahassee were completely different. I had the midwife and I had the oldest obstetric.
I gave birth in Tallahassee. My first daughter was in Tallahassee.
You were at Memorial?
I was TCH.
TCH, Tallahassee, yes. I was there. And you had the oldest obstetric man who gave birth for you. And he did mine because I was with the midwife, and the midwife, it was her day off. I was with her the whole time. I knew I was going to have a midwifery birth, and then she wasn't there. And I freaked out, and he came in. He was very nice, but it really was him coming in with several medical students and say, hey, this is their last birth to be doctors. Can they be in here? And I was like, all right. But you know what? I give it to that. It's like, everyone supported me in doing it my way because they knew where I came from. They knew I came from a midwifery care. They knew what I wanted. So they put me in the room with a birth tub. Birth tub was dirty, so I couldn't use it. So I cried through that. I was like, y'all playing with me. My baby was turned the wrong way. And they're like, oh, you're going to have a C-section. I'm like, no, I'm not. Turned my own baby. I was like, nah, nope, we got this. Don't touch me. I do it. 19, 20-year-old dummy. But in hindsight, this was just what I knew to do. And then I gave birth to my baby. And I did it my way. And so coming to this area where I was college educated now, I was married, I was a nurse, I know my stuff and dealt with such trauma. I was like, okay, this is what I know my accolades and all my stuff. I know you should be treating, I would expect you to treat me even better, but this is how you treat everyone. This isn't for me. And this is what I became a doula, because I knew for my daughters, this will not be your existence. You're going to have all the information, have all the say so. So if you choose to give birth, we know how we're showing up. And so my idea of how I do this work is that where I'm from in this community, most of us are related. If you're from St. Pete, really from St. Pete, you a Williams, you a Smith, you a Blake, you cousins. So if you move in that space as I'm taking care of my family members, you show up real different than you're taking care of strangers. And about teaching the medical system to do the same. I do that when I doula everyone in the room. You're a nurse, you're this or this. Okay, so I need you to not look at this person as just patient number 125. I need you to see this. This is Carla. And imagine Carla is your sister. What type of care would you give to your sister that you love? Not the one that you can't stand, the one that you love. Automatically, care is completely different in the room. The nurse feels good. She wants to be there because she wants to help, because she's interested and excited about moving your body around, knowing that they have the support. The doctor can come in and out. The midwives tend to want to stay in a little longer because they get to touch a piece of type of birthing that they miss to do in the hospital setting. And you're making sure everyone feels comfortable and that we're all there for the same reason, for her to have a non-traumatized birth. And when you birth like that, it speaks resolves. And they're like, your blood pressure is perfect. The baby's doing great. What's going on? There's a person in the room who cares about you.
Yeah.
And that's what it does.
Yep. And that could be separation between life or death, literally. Having a person in the room who cares about you.
Yep.
And it's knowledgeable.
Absolutely. Black doulas save lives. And it's not like it's a t-shirt and it's a thing, but that's really a thing. It's like Black doulas really can make the difference of life and death by making sure that you're seen and that you're heard.
I want that shirt. Like, if you ain't got it, you need to make one.
We'll make them shirts again. It's time to bring it, because it's, this doula matters. You matter. And you have to sometimes show up. And I have shown up in them type of custom shirts like, yo, I matter, she matter, this matters. Show up as such. And then the whole room was like, oh, she not playing with us. No, we not. We're going to have a good time. We're going to have a beautiful experience, but you better show up appropriately or give me someone else, because we don't have time. We're worrying about saving lives today. We're bringing life to the world, and her life needs to come with it. If you can't do that and can't nuck if you buck, you got to get out.
Love it. I wish I had you. Shoot.
I mean, if you ever want to do this again, you know where to find me. That'd be a great podcast. I mean, you'd be so cute though,
Oh Lord, I don't know about doing it again. We have to talk about that trauma, that imprint that I got going on.
We work all the way through it first.
Yes. Lord Jesus. Listen, so how would anybody like me or somebody else, I know we have to wrap up, but how do people afford doula services? Like,
That's
is
a
it
great question.
insurance?
So some people take insurance, and you got to be very careful about what your insurance company says, because sometimes they'll say, okay, we can take it through Medicaid or whichever, but not cover really what a doula does. You can have it be gifted. I've had people do it for like, instead of having a big baby shower, they'll say, hey, can you put into my doula fund?
Ooh, that's a good idea.
So if I know I have my Starbucks and my Dunkin' every single day, if I admit the Dunkin' and Starbucks and only eat out maybe instead of 7 times a week, maybe only eat out 3-4 times a week, there's your doula money. So there's a lot of different ways you can come at this to be able to afford a doula. It's like, and a lot of doulas will work with you. Sometimes we do payment plans. Some doulas do barter. So say you do podcasting and websites and you do design and they need to uplift their things, or you make shirts, maybe you can barter a portion of your payment. So it's about just being out there and talking to people. There's programs. Sometimes Healthy Start has programs for doulas and everything else. So it's just about reaching out to your community and seeing who's there. And if there's a doula that really resonates with you and you really want this, talk to, like, look, listen here. I know you are worth what you want to be paid. Yes, please honor that. Do not lowball your doula because it can be disrespectful. But be honest with them. It's like, hey, I can't do this, but my husband knows how to paint houses. Can we meet somewhere in the middle?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've done that. I've had clients move houses for me. I've had clients from 6 years ago who still show up to me to this day. You call them, they right there, and have done amazing things, because it's not that you're building relationships, and sometimes they turn into, especially in our community, lifelong relationships. So
yep, that's right.
You know, my best people who I came out of with my first 25 births, I did for free. They were really not free. When I had someone pass in my family, the first ones to show up to my house were my clients. My children go do a birth. My clients, drop them off. We know, we got you. You know, outfits made, got you. So it's all about connecting, and you can get doula services paid for. You just got to change your mindset on what is important to you. Is a $5,000 baby shower important to you? Or maybe doing a $2,000 baby shower and then having the extra 24 or 25 to carry for your doula. So you got to decide what matters more, what it looks like on the outside or who's supporting you in the background.
That's right. And getting through that process.
Absolutely.
So before we go, how can we find you, Courtney? How can someone find you in your services?
Oh, great question. So there is www.3gems.com. That's my website. I am also on IG and Facebook, 3 Gems Birth Services. Look me up, find me. I love to connect. Send me an email, visit me on IG or Facebook. There's always ways to reach me. I answer questions. You know, I've talked to people like, hey, I'm scared about this. Can you talk to me? And I do. I try to answer as many questions as I can for people. And if you want services from me, you know, email me, talk to me. I love to meet you in person. I do Zooms and just be like, where are you? How do we connect? How do we do these things? And even sometimes connecting people just to be like, it sounds like you just need a healing space to vent. Let me connect you with the right people or get the right group of moms together so you can have that space of healing. So just reach out to me.
Yes, please do. And if you didn't catch all of that, circle back to me and I'll be sure to get you her information. Carla says, Courtney, thank you. Sophia says, love this. Awesome. Thank you. And Courtney, I say, I love you. I love your work. You belong here. Your work is necessary on so many different levels. I thank God for your gifting. And listen, you always have a space here. If you ever want to come back on, I know April is maternity, I don't know, something. I think it's April and May. We're going to circle back.
Circle back. I love to have you. It's such a blessing to be in these spaces and letting me be on part of your platform. And just thank you. And I love what I do. And I'm reading Carla's point.
I'm reading Carla's
too. Guys, for just showing up and being here. And then, you know, I'd love to come back. I love to talk about, you know, breastfeeding and what it is for Black women and what that connection looks like, and just having these conversations about Black mental health and how maternal health works into it. So thank you for having me in your space.
Absolutely. There you go, Carla. This might be your next interview on breastfeeding, because that's a whole nother conversation. And it's so bonded. Don't let me get started. I love nursing
I
my
love it.
children.
I'm an avid breastfeeder. First one 2.5 years, second one 3.5. So I know what it's like, but I also know the
Wow.
mental health pieces that come with the hardships of breastfeeding. So
Yes.
let's get into it. I can't wait.
Yes. Well, listen, thank you everyone for tuning in. We love to have Courtney back again. And Courtney, I'm just grateful for you continuing the work. We will see you all next week. I will. Courtney don't have to be here, but I will see you all next week. I don't know what the topic is. I never do. So just show up and tune in. I promise you it's going to be dope. All right. Have a great week. Live intentional.
Thank you.
Thank you.